Hey everybody, happy Friday. Hope you're having a great day. Excuse me. The weather has turned here, so I am finally not in a hooded sweatshirt or sweater, and that is a great thing. So hope everybody, like I said, is having a great week, getting ready for the weekend, and just doing great. So this week, I wanted to continue talking about business insurance, and I thought the best place to start would be with a business owner's policy. So when we say that, you might hear it called the BOP, BOP, business owner's policy, and think of this as your standard, I'm going to call it like a homeowner's policy, right? Most, we're going to call them Main Street type businesses, so think a restaurant, or a retail store, something like that, that is pretty standard. We write those on what's called BOPs. Now, other industries, other professions, other types of things might be more complex, and they might have a little bit more of a complex type of policy when we talk for business owners. But we're going to talk in, okay, you're going to open up a store, whether it be a restaurant or, some sort of studio, art studio, or, a shop, something like that, right? And in our little case study, as we'll call it here, is I'll use an example. I'm going to use my daughter Reese's shop. As you remember from last week, she was going to have a donut shop, right? Sprinkles and frosting. So from there, we'll kind of talk about that. So standard business owner's policies, we'll call it, right, is basically your property and your liability, right? So the stuff that you have and things that you might be responsible for, right? Just like a homeowner's policy, but now it's for your business. Inside that, we're going to talk about those two main parts, the property and the liability. And with a business, there could be a couple different ways that you might have your property, right? Do you own the building, right? Or are you renting or leasing a space, right? So depending on that, and this is where I don't want to say I get excited, but when I sit down with people and we talk about their businesses, that's one of the things that we talk about. Okay, like, do you own this space? Do you rent this space? Do you lease this space? What are you responsible for? And what did you do to the space, right? Because with a business owner's policy, yeah, you have personal property, but if you're leasing a space from a landlord, you might very often do a build out. So in Reese's case, right, she was going to lease a space in the square, and obviously she would have to do some work down there to make her donut shop, right? So we insure the stuff that you do, right? Even though you might not be able to pick it up and move it, right? She might have to put walls up, or if she's going to have ovens and things like that for her baked goods, like, we don't insure that like regular personal property like we could pick up and move. We call it improvements and betterments of the space, and we do that so that we can insure it, but we get a better rate, because it's not like somebody could steal an oven, right? It's part of the building, right? So we're going to look at your property, right? And again, in Reese's Donut Shop, right? So what does she have? Does she have tables and chairs and coolers, and maybe she has her materials to make the donuts? Maybe she's got stuff because she does donuts for weddings and things like that, and so she has all that stuff, right? And we're going to make sure we insure that properly, right? From there, we're going to talk about liability, and this, when we talk about a business owner's policy, is a thing that could be considered, and in my view, the most important thing, because you have your property and that's important, but what happens if somebody accuses you of something, right? If somebody gets sick from Reese's Donuts and they accuse Reese of selling them a bad donut, right? We not only want to make sure that we protect Reese from, if somebody should slip and fall while they're in her restaurant, but also too, somebody says they get sick, and your liability is going to protect you from things like that, right? And that is really, really important. So we're going to go and we're going to have her protected for that too. Now that could be when we rate for something like that, or we ask questions to somebody, there's different ways that we rate that sort of thing. So that's where, if you're ever you're a business owner, you get with somebody like me, I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions, right? Because it could be rated on how much payroll that you have, or how much sales you do, or how big your space is. Every company does a little bit different thing, and sometimes that's an auditable premium. And what that means is that, just like taxes, where we pay an estimated amount and then we go back and audit at the end of the year, and either you collect more premium if you're short, or you or you give back premium if you pay too much. Same thing happens here, right? So we're going to sit with the business owner and be like, okay, what are these things? This is what it's rated on. Okay, what do you project? It's very important, based on what you do and how you feel. My perspective on that is, I want to be as close as possible, so at the end of the year when we audit, I give you very little back, the insurance company gives you very little back, and you don't have to pay anything, right? So it's going to be, depending on your premium, very, less than $100. We try to be either way. So it's important to get with your insurance agent and be like, hey, if something changes, or you start to have a whole bunch of sales, based on how we do that, be like, hey, I'm way more than I thought. How should we go about that? And at renewal time, we sit and we talk about that to make sure, right? So from there, a couple other little coverages and things, and there's so many more things, and we'll break those down as we go through. But again, this is kind of just like a quick little version of what Reese might need. The other important coverage, as it would pertain to kind of property, we'll consider it, is business income loss of use. And what this means is, God forbid something should happen to Reese's business, whether there's a fire, or something happens to the building and there's a tornado or something like that. This is going to replace the income that was lost while we put it back together, right? So in an advent where, okay, something happens and there's a fire and it's going to be a year, we might replace a year's worth of income for Reese. Or she might be able to find a place to move to in the short term, but she's going to make less. And we're going to replace that income that was lost and any extra expense she might have, right? And that's important for a couple reasons. The worst thing that could happen is, something happens like that, a fire, and we put it back, but Reese wasn't able to work, and now our customers have gone somewhere else. Or she wasn't able to pay her people. She wasn't able to pay her employees, and they went to go work somewhere else. And now that she's able to open back up and she's got this beautiful new store and new space, and now nobody comes. So that helps you in the short term and in the long term to make sure that what happens after that claim or after that spot is put back, that you're going to be okay. Depending on your business, cyber coverage is being very big recently, and something that we all hear about, whether it is identities stolen or compromised, or depending on how your business operates and works, do they have stuff on the cloud? And we've all heard those horror stories of companies getting, trying to think of the word here, companies basically getting ransomed, right? Like they basically hijack their information and ransom it back. There is coverage for things like that. It is very new, something that I would say has become more prevalent in, let's say, the last 3 to 5 years. So depending on your business and what you have in your exposure, something that you should always talk about, based on information that you have and keep and store, and what somebody might have access to and what you might be liable for. Also, too, to think about, like, does Reese take anything out of her store? Do we have to worry about things not just in her store, but are they mobile? Are they set up at shows and exhibits and things like that? So all that kind of goes into, and again, we just talked about a couple of very short things with this, but as you start your business, as you start to get anything going, or as you're thinking about your coverages and things like that, these are where we would start, basically, right? Learn about your business, learn about what you do, learn about the risks that you have and the things that you have to think about, and then what's the best way to cover them. what's the best way with your space and with your employees and all that sort of stuff. So if you have any questions on this or anything else, please don't hesitate to reach out. I hope everybody has a great weekend. Enjoy the warmer weather, and we will look forward to continuing this with you next week. Thanks so much.